we will begin with the new topic, fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of the male and the female gametes to form the zygote. This process of fertilization involves three major steps. First is the capacitation of the sperms. Capacitation means maturation of the sperms. Second is the entry of the sperm into the ooplasm and activation of ovum. And the third is the ovum and sperm interaction in the fallopian tube or the oviduct. So, three steps in fertilization. First, capacitation of the sperm, that is maturation of the sperm, entry of the sperm into the ooplasm and activation of the ovum, and sperm and ovum interaction in the oviduct or the fallopian tube. Now, first is capacitation or maturation of the sperms. When the capacitation or maturation of the sperms takes place, there is entry of large number of calcium ions into the sperm. These ions are probably produced by the glands which are present here in the fallopian tube, and these calcium ions increase the mobility of the sperm tail. Second is that when the sperm is just about to reach the ovum, the membrane of the head that covers the acrosome is lost, and this exposes the contents of the acrosome. We've studied the structure of the sperm. So what happens in the second step? The membrane covering the head is lost and exposes the acrosome or the contents of the acrosome, that is the enzyme higher uronidase. Higher uronidase enzyme now pushes the corona radiator cells as well as it dissolves the zona pellucida because the sperm has to enter. So what is higher uronidase doing? It has pushed away the corona radiator cells and it starts dissolving the zona pellucida, especially at the entry point. At this point, the compatibility of the sperms to the ovum is checked. How is it checked? As soon as one sperm enters into the ooplasm, what happens is, as soon as it enters, the entire zona pellucida becomes impermeable to the other sperms. So only one sperm can enter, and that is known as monospermy. This entry of the sperm into the ooplasm activates the ovum, which has completed its second meiotic division. So the second meiotic division is complete, and as a result, the second polar body is extruded out, and meantime the female pronucleus is formed. Then what happens in the sperm? There was the head, the middle piece and the tail. The middle piece and the tail, they detach from the head region. So what happens? The head of the sperm forms the male pronucleus. The female pronucleus and the male pronucleus fuse together inside the fallopian tube and form the zygote. Now this zygote will undergo the next step called cleavage in order to give rise to a number of stages. So cleavage divisions will now take place so that from the egg the embryo will be formed. During the cleavage divisions, what will happen? Three major steps we will be studying: morula, blastula and gastrula. Morula is a 16-cell stage. So you know that when they have fused, they have formed a zygote, and this zygote undergoes 2, 4, 8, 16 cells. This ball of 16 cells is called morula. Then we will be studying what happens to the morula. Then we will study the next stage, that is the blastula. Blastula, it's known because it's got a cavity in between and called the blastocele, so it's named blastula. And the third step during embryo formation would be gastrulation, that is the formation of three germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. These three germ layers give rise to all the parts of the baby when it grows. So we come to the next topic, from egg to the embryo. Now the first process that starts in the zygote after fertilization is called cleavage. So you can define cleavage as the process of successive or progressive subdivision of zygote by mitotic periodic cell division into an increasing number of cells of progressively decreasing size. So in cleavage, there is progressive subdivision of the zygote. All the divisions that take place immediately after zygote formation are mitotic divisions, and all the resultant cells by the divisions, you can see 2, 4, 8, 16 cells, all the resulting cells, they are known as blastomeres. Then these division in the human egg is holoblastic, because the human egg is alesical. Alesical means without yolk. So the division is holoblastic cleavage, and it divides by a vertical division into two unequal cells. Then further divisions are also vertical and at right angles to each other, resulting in a 3 and a 4 cell stage. So you can see a 2 cell, 4 cell stage. Other divisions, mitotic divisions, lead to a 8 cell stage, and after the 8 cell stage comes the 16 cell stage, and this 16 cell stage is known as morula. So this is morula, a 16 cell stage where cells are arranged in 2 layers, inner ones and outer ones. So this is a 16 cell stage. This 16 cell solid ball-like structure resembles a mulberry fruit, and so it is known as morula. What happens at this morula stage? This is the morula stage where this egg reaches into the uterus. So on the 4th day, it will reach into the uterus, and after floating for 2 days in the uterus, it will get finally implanted into the endometrial lining. So this is the uterus, this is the oviduct. Here, this is the ovary which has released the ovum. Ovum is picked up by the fimbriae or the finger-like projections, and it is propelled by peristaltic movements into the oviduct. When fertilization occurs, zygote is formed. Then cleavage takes place, 2 cell, 3 cell, 4 cell, 8 cell, 16 cell stage. 16 cell stage में it reaches into the uterus, and at this morula stage it floats for about 2 days in this uterus, and finally on the 7th day gets implanted in the endometrial lining of the uterus. So this stage is known as morula. Just before this, you can see that this layer green, I have drawn it with green. This is the zona pellucida. So just before the zona pellucida disappears, the morula will develop into the blastula. So before developing into the blastula, this zona pellucida is disappeared. Then during implantation at this morula stage, it produces a hormone which is known as HCG. HCG is human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, and this human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, or HCG, helps the morula in implantation in the endometrial lining. Now what happens by the 11th day, the embryo is fully embedded inside the endometrial lining of the uterus, and this is known as the deciduum. After the morula stage starts the next stage, that is known as blastula. So formation of blastula from morula is known as blastulation. This blastula what happens in this stage, the zonas, you can see the zona pellucida is degenerating, this green wall, and the cells of the morula get arranged into 2 layers, the outer trophoblast cells and the inner mast cells. The outer one are the trophoblast cells and the inner mast cells. A fluid is secreted by the trophoblast cell that pushes the inner mast cells so that a cavity is created, and this is known as the blastocele. This entire wall of cells or blastomeres with a blastocele is known as blastula. After the formation of blastula, the next stage comes is gastrula. Gastrula is not in your syllabus, but this blastula, the inner mass cells and the trophoblast cells, they give rise to a number of cells, layers, and they are the 3 germ layers. So during the gastrula stage, just after blastula, takes the process of gastrulation or formation of 3 germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. From ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm, all the organs of the baby they develop. Now I'll explain this diagram. You can see this is the uterus, this is the oviduct, and as I told you, after ovulation the ovum is picked up and it is transferred into the fallopian tube. Then sperms, they fertilize the egg, and this is the fertilized egg or the zygote. The zygote undergoes cleavage divisions 2, 4, 8 and 16, and when it reaches the 16th cell stage, you call it the morula. The morula floats here in the uterus for 2 days, and on the 7th day gets implanted or fixed in the endometrial lining, and this implantation is held by a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin hormone that aids in implantation. Then what happens? By the time it gets fixed, and here it is converted into blastula, and blastula I've already explained consists of a blastocele or a cavity, and this is the endometrial lining. And after the fixation of the of this morula here into the endometrial lining, you start calling the endometrial lining as decidua or decidua capsularis is the outer portion. Then you have decidua basalis and decidua parietalis. So with this we complete the egg to be embryo stage.